All right, we are live. Today is Thursday, April 30th, and this is our weekly developer check-in meeting. We are going to start with quick introductions. So Nate, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Nate Lampton from Oakland, California, and we have a lot of progress on core issues this week. There's I'll be doing the updates, and then there's a little bit of work yet to do before 116. So that's it.
Great. Luke?
I'm Luke McCormick from San Ramon, California. I'm a web marketing guy and occasional programmer, and I'm here mostly to lurk and keep up to date on things in the development side of the house.
Great. Joseph?
I'm Joseph from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've been working on a lot of stuff, performance and entity things.
Thank you for doing that. I am Jen Lampton from Oakland, California, and I have nothing of value to add. Let's roll into the community section. I want to send a quick shout out to Rositas, who has applied to join the Backdrop Contrib group by porting the hook post action module. So thanks for your work on that, and we will get a review back to you later today. Under contributed projects, we have two that have new releases this week. View selective exposed filters and source set image. So if you're using those two modules in 777, there's now backdrop versions available, which is great. So let's roll into updates on backdrop itself. Neat.
All right. So 115.2. 115 is our current release of backdrop, and 115.2 is the next bug fix release. Of note, issues for 115.2 is 4308. That issue is for PHP 7.4 support. There's a number of places throughout core that need to be updated to properly support PHP 7.4, primarily due to the way that checking non-arrays using the array syntax is now either deprecated or a warning in PHP 7.4. And kind of throughout the code base, there's a slew of places where we're using that old accessor format. So 4308, Joseph has been working on it and put together a pretty comprehensive pull request that needs review. So thank you for doing that, Joseph. I think that'll be a fairly high priority for us. Just supporting the latest version of PHP should always be something that we should be able to handle.
And the latest Ubuntu LTS came out last week, and it's running 7.4, so I felt urgency to finish that one up.
Yep, great point. Speaking of Ubuntu or Debian updating their underlying things, the latest. Oh, you know what? I was thinking of, if you install MySQL, then MySQL has a new version that's not compatible with Backdrop as well. I think it's MySQL 8. But oddly, that doesn't impact most, like the default distributions, because they're no longer running MySQL. They're running Maria. So Maria is still fine, but MySQL has an issue. So, okay. Anyway, so 115.2, that's the only issue of note that we have. But there's still lots of issues in the 115.2 milestone. Let's see, there's currently 66 of them. Most all of which have a pull request in some format, although with the recent flurry of reviewing, most of those have been moved back to needs work. So okay, that's all I've got for 115.2. No other urgent bugs to be addressed immediately. 116 is the next minor version of Backdrop, and feature freeze for 116 is tomorrow. And as discussed several times in previous meetings, we're sticking to May 1st as being feature freeze. We're not extending through the weekend because there's no holiday or no what was the other? Oh, it doesn't actually land on a weekend, just lands on Friday. So tomorrow is Code Freeze Day, with May 15th being release day. We've got a number of things that have all been put in there. I'm not going to run through them all, though. But let's go over the ones that we had since last week and what remains to be done for 116. So first up, we've got 3174. BW Panda had been working on the ability for install profiles to have base and sub install profiles so that you could inherit one profile from another. In 3174, it hit a snag where we were unable to effectively test doing install profiles with this new functionality. And at the same time, we also found a workaround that made it so that modifications to core were actually unnecessary to do something like make a standard profile and then modify it in one extra way. So BW Panda is still verifying if that workaround is suitable for his purposes, but if it is, it looks likely. Well, it's already likely that this isn't going to be in 116, but it's also likely that we don't really need this functionality in core at all if there's a suitable implementation for existing profiles to use to accomplish the same goal. So that one probably is going to be moved to one fix. Allowing forward revisions, 4354. This issue has been absolutely everywhere this release cycle. Let's see. Doc Wilmot and Tim are the advocates for this, or Doc Wilmot is the developer and Tim is the advocate, but neither of them are here this meeting, so I'll give an update that we pivoted this issue from being really ambitious and covering a whole new set of like, first of all, just even allowing forward revisions in the user interface, that is like creating a revision that is not published when you make it. Then it went full on like almost workflow capabilities. And then we scaled it back down so that we included only the API capabilities. And so 4354 covers the API capabilities of allowing forward revisions. And that pull request was merged this week. So we definitely got something done, but it doesn't affect the user interface in any way whatsoever. What it does is it allows the API new capabilities, so you can just create a new revision on a node and not have it immediately become active. So that opens the door to things like workflow on revisions, so that you could have unpublished drafts of revisions, and it also allows potentially for scheduled revisions. So both of those things are now possible and much easier to implement in or will be in Backdrop 116 thanks to these API enhancements. I'm not sure how where we'll take that from here. Obvious contrib solutions are now much more feasible and possible, but it's unclear if we'll pursue like more workflow type functionality in core. I think we'll probably have to have a discussion about what's really core suitable there. But at least it's now possible. Next up is allowing the customization of the author and date display, that is also known as the submitted byline, issue 2379. Tim was the advocate for this one. On this one, we also ran into a little bit of a compromise that this allows you to specify the submitted byline with tokens, and both comments and nodes include a submitted byline, but only nodes were actually using it in core. Comments were using separately printing out the author and the date in the core theme templates. So we didn't want to add a setting for comments that didn't actually get used. So we stripped out the comment functionality, only included the node functionality and merged it. So still really great though. That submitted byline is one of those things that sticks out as like this is probably, oh, I know what software this is. And normally you'd think that's a Drupal site, but in our case, that's a backdrop site. So it's nice that we can allow people to, make their site less generic really easily without any templating. All right. Last major piece of functionality that we're working on for 116, we have a new text format configuration user interface, issue 1032. Gregory is the advocate for this. The status on this is that Doc Wilmot has done an enormous amount of work to revamp the user interface using dialogues and the state system to save the text format configurations as you're proceeding through the dialogues, or if you have JavaScript turned off, proceeding back and forth through several pages of configuration. And it makes it so that you can see more of the text format configuration settings all on one page. And at the same time, things that are updating, settings that are updating the rest of the page, it becomes more clear when those changes are being made. So issue 1032 got a code review this past week, and now it's just waiting on an updated pull request and then another round of reviewing on that. So of all of the issues that we have that currently still need work, 1032, the new text format configuration UI, is the last one that I want to definitely see completed and put in before the end of tomorrow. Hey Andy, do you have anything to add on? I'm sorry, you just hopped in here, and I'm laying this on you. Do you have anything to add for 1032, the text format UI?
No, I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay, great. Let's see. We've got another issue that was put into the 116 milestone recently. Deprecate cache clear all, issue 2158. This is spun out of the new entity cache that is in 116. Cache clear all has been around for all of the Drupal 7 release or all of the Drupal 7 cycle, as well as backdrop. It's been there the whole time. However, we don't really use it in core because it's doing like 6 different things all in one function. And so 2158 is just a recommendation that we mark that as deprecated to let people know that there's alternatives that they should be using instead. So that just needs a pull request to put the @deprecated on the function and then write a change record recommending the alternatives. So no actual changes there, just letting people know that that function is deprecated. And that's it for 116.
Do we put messages into Watchdog for things that we've marked as deprecated?
Yes. That's a good question, actually. We do when there's when you shouldn't be using it at all.
We have a function for Watchdog deprecated function when you're supposed to call a different function instead of this function. And there's a pull request to add a Watchdog deprecated method, I think. But I don't think we have anything for like a change in scope of a function or anything else. So it's kind of arbitrary, I guess.
Yeah, I guess maybe my concern here is that that could cause a lot of logging, even though logging is turned off by default for cache clear all. I guess cache clear all isn't called that frequently. So I guess the answer is probably yes. So okay, let's find the function here. Yeah, you're right that there is a function for deprecated, for logging deprecated functions. Okay, it's just called Watchdog deprecated function. And what it does is if Watchdog deprecated notices are not enabled, which they're not by default, it just immediately returns. So I think the answer to that question is yes. We should call Watchdog deprecated function. And if it's deprecated logging is turned on, it's not by default, then it will log it. So I guess there's more than just adding add deprecated. There's also calling Watchdog deprecated function. Okay, let's see. So recap of 116. So we also have some change records to complete. 116 adds entity cache in a core, like I mentioned earlier, but we don't have a change record for it yet. Jen said she had started working on that, but then needed some assistance.
Yeah, I didn't even start working on it. I tried to work on it and realized I had no idea what to write, so I've done nothing.
Let's see. We also, we added the ability to re-enable text formats after they've been disabled. There's no change record necessary for that one. Let's see, we added a new hook for blocks to handle changes in layouts. And we added config values can be overridden via settings.php. I think this one does already have a change record, maybe. Let's take a look. It's issue 2805. It does not actually have a change record. So I'm going to tag this one as needing one. Because really, this is different from 777, even though it's an enhancement to Backdrop that no previous version of Backdrop has had config overrides. Every previous version of Drupal has had variable overrides. So for people coming from 777, they'll want an equivalent of how they used to do it. Okay. That's it. We've got 116 pretty well in the bag, it looks like. I mean, we've still got that one to wrangle about the configuration UI, text format configuration UI, but other than that, we're looking in really good shape. There aren't any other issues in 116 to bring up, so that's it. It's kind of funny. I like that our objective for this release was to not have a mad dash here at the very end, which is tomorrow, and instead we did a code sprint over the previous weekend. And from the number of people that are here and the number of issues that we have remaining, I think it worked. All right, that's it. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to add?
I have a question about issue number 3302, which is to make Backdrop do better in Google Pagespeed out of the box. And I've been looking at various ways to defer CSS loading, and they all seem like weird hacks.
Correct.
The simplest and most straightforward one I've seen so far was to change it from rel style sheet to rel preload, and then have JavaScript that runs on the onload to change it back to rel style sheet.
Whoa.
Which works, and it makes Pagespeed happy, but I don't know, it seems weird.
That seems like the sort of thing. Does it actually result in a speed improvement, or is it something that like is just like tricking Pagespeed into thinking that it's better?
It makes it so it doesn't actually render your style sheets until after the onload event. So it like causes your first paint to be faster.
But doesn't it cause it to render with incomplete styles that way?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure because the actual, like, as far as me looking at my dev site, it's so fast that I don't notice it either way. It's just that, I don't know, the page speed numbers are incredibly pessimistic about your internet connection.
Jen just had a tell me about it look on her face.
Yeah, there should be like a, when you're using like a Google Chrome console, there should be like a throttle my internet speed option so you can like slow it way down and see what it looks like.
So I don't have any suggestions right off for that, Joseph. I think that my experience with trying to make Pagespeed happy is that it involves a lot of things that are difficult to do in a general fashion, you know, like inlining your CSS or like including inline CSS for the stuff above the fold, because they are content specific requirements. So you have to know what your content is in order to optimize what goes in particular locations.
Right.
And it's difficult for a CMS like Backdrop to provide something like that because we don't quite know how people are going to build out their pages.
Well, but there's a bunch of stuff that is in CMS specific, like in Drupal, there was like an async module that let you define like which JavaScript libraries could be loaded asynchronously and which couldn't. And that added just a core attribute to the like script tag. And so there's stuff like that where I think if we added, you know, an API tool, like, oh, you can choose to make this asynchronous or not, then the contrib modules could be like, oh, this JavaScript is safe to load asynchronously, and you could make that faster. Whereas if we don't even provide the tool, like everything waits until your page is fully loaded before it tries to add. And it just kind of, it snowballs a little bit where it's just like, oh yeah, this just gets worse and worse. I also have been fighting with the page speed stuff on various sites for a while. And it seems like there is a bunch that's site specific, but there's a bunch of other stuff that you could do globally, like choosing which style sheets could be loaded before the first paint and which ones could be loaded after could be determined by like a module. It might know whether it's safe to load it later or not. I don't know. So stuff that like CSS that affects like a slider, right? If the slider isn't on the page yet, the CSS doesn't have to be on the page yet. So there are some things that I think could be, the decision could be deferred from a human to the, or a human building the website to the human that built the tool that you use to build the website.
I just ran Pagespeed on a demo sandbox to see what we get. We get a 90 out of the box, which is pretty good. But yeah, the main thing is eliminate render blocking resources, which is CSS files and then the JavaScript files.
Yeah, I actually found it's pretty easy to make your JavaScript defer because there's actually a defer attribute that we handle. But you can't do that with jQuery. It like breaks everything if you defer jQuery. So that actually was a big improvement, just making it so that everything else it was deferred and jQuery was not, and that got it down to where it at least didn't have a red bar, it would just a yellow bar.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, I wish I knew more about this to actually provide more feedback, but I think that this issue probably, like, things that we can implement should be split off into their own things. Like, improving page speed should be a
Meta.
peripheral side benefit of general enhancements that are all separate issues.
Yeah, I think it was set up as a meta. But I think like the goal should be like a backdrop site should not perform terribly in Google, or it's gonna like drive people who want that experience to other CMSs that don't perform terribly. And I don't know how much other, like, I don't know what the what other CMSs are doing to not perform terribly. But that might also be worth looking into if there's something that we know is really fast. Try and copy them.
All right. Anything else? All right, let's wrap it up then. Thank you guys for joining. Like I said, we've only got tomorrow to wrap up 116. Really, that in my mind means we have to get that text formats functionality complete. Joseph, that PHP 7.4 support, I think it's not new functionality. I would say, it's bug fixing. Like that can be, as long as there's no potential cause for breakage, then that I think can come post feature freeze because it's a bug enhancement or bug fix. So that would be a nice add-on for 116 to have that completed at the same time as well.
Cool.
But we've got a couple of weeks to get that all buttoned up. So
how do we get our test suite to run PHP 7.4? Do we have to ping Gore?
So oddly, no. Well, unclear.
I think we need like a ZenCI environment that's using PHP 7.4.
Yeah. Is there like a YAML file we update or something?
Yeah, there is a YAML file we update, which weirdly is on backdropcms.org, is where the YAML file comes from. But I'm not sure that ZenCI has PHP 7.4 available for us to actually utilize. So that's one option. We also, BW Panda has been working on using, he's been working on using Tugboat for pull request sandboxes, but not for running the tests.
Yeah. But that might also be something we should try. I know Gore has done a ton of optimizations on our tests on his infrastructure. We should make sure that if we're going to switch to Tugboat, that it's not like significantly slower.
Right. And I think Tugboat also isn't really made for running tests. It's not a general CI platform. It's intended for sandboxes. So it probably isn't the best choice there. So I guess yes, we need to get a hold of Gore in order to get PHP 7.4 on the pull request testing. Okay, that's it. All right. Happy feature freeze, everybody. I'll see you guys in May. All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.